welcome back, everybody. Right, welcome back those in the room and welcome back those at home. Thank you to those at home who got back on time. I apologise for our delegates here. I forgot to call them back, so it's entirely my fault. So I'm sorry to keep you waiting for a few extra minutes. One of the highlights of our first ever professionals conference was the ability for you to ask questions of our community. Something you said very, very strongly that you wanted again. You told us, we've done it. So I'm absolutely delighted to have this fantastic panel with us today. And to do it justice, I'm going to introduce our Deputy CEO, Paula.
Thank you, Matt. Yes, hello everybody. I'm Paula McGrath, Deputy Chief Executive at Retina UK. Really delighted to have the opportunity to introduce this session today, learning from lived experience, the wider family's perspective. For every person diagnosed with an inherited sight loss condition, many others will be affected. Parents, partners, children, and other family members. Some may almost be expecting a diagnosis. There may be a family history. For others, it might come like a bolt from the blue. Either way, there's likely to be, as we've heard this morning, a range of mixed emotions, unanswered questions, and uncertainty for the future. And not just for the person receiving the diagnosis, but for their family members too. And not just at point of diagnosis. The inherited, progressive nature of the condition will mean that there may be many points of impact throughout somebody's journey with inherited sight loss. Many calls and emails that come to our helpline come from family members. They may be struggling with their own emotions at the same time as wanting to provide the very best practical and emotional support that they can for their loved one. At Retina UK, we provide a safe space for people to have those conversations, to share those feelings and emotions with somebody outside of their family. And sometimes that can be enough. We may also signpost to Discover Wellbeing, another resource that we've developed. And there's a specific pathway on that resource for family members, professionals, and friends. But of course, it's important to acknowledge, as we've heard this morning, that everybody's emotions will be different. Some people will want to find out as much information as they possibly can at point of diagnosis. Others may prefer not to know and to adopt a wait-and-see attitude. There is no right or wrong. At Retina UK, we believe the only way to improve our services and make a real difference for people is to listen, to have open and sometimes difficult conversations so that we can understand how we can improve our information and support services. And that's why I'm delighted today that we're joined by a number of our community who all look absolutely terrified at the moment, I have to say. So please put them at ease. Who have so kindly agreed to come along and share their very personal experiences with us so that we can all learn from them and in turn improve the support services that we all provide. I'd like to invite them to briefly introduce themselves. So Yana, would you like to go first?
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Yana Yu. I was born in China and here for my master and a PhD education. I'm currently work for Bardet-Biedl as a research assistant intern. Thank you.
Hi guys, my name is Faye Maguire and I have a son who's 26, Joe, who suffers with RP.
Hi, my name's Jen Hills and I was diagnosed with RP a couple of years ago. My dad has RP and my granddad before him as well.
Thank you, Bobby.
Hi, I'm Bobby. I'm a former prison officer and I'm 33 and I was diagnosed with RP approximately 2 years ago.
Thank you, Bobby.
Hello, I'm Lou. I'm Bobby's partner and we live together now. So.
Thank you, everybody. So the idea is of the session, as you can tell from the people that we've got with us, we're going to talk about that wider perspective and the impact of inherited sight loss on the wider family. So what I plan to do is to ask each of our panellists a few questions, and then we'll open up for your questions at the end. So Yanan, you were born and spent your childhood in China.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about sort of society's expectations for you there, and are there any differences in the UK?
Okay, so I was born and I grew up in China until my 22, I think. I was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa. So I am fully blind now. So in China, as a visual impaired person, especially blind person, there is nearly no expectation on us. Just keep survive. And maybe when you are an adult, try to find a job. Usually working as a massager or any related job in that industry, like body health care or pain treatment or any such kind of job. And we have very, very low education rates for visual impaired people. So every year, I did my bachelor in China. So only around, we got, now it's around 18 million people with visual impairments in China. But every year, we only have 200 or 300 of them who can join the university to do their bachelor. And that's the current situation in my country. And the situation difference is in UK because the economic development and the society difference, I think visual impaired people here can receive better education. And for the eye care in China, because we don't have the free medical system for everything, so only people from the rich family or at least middle class family, they are enabled to receive some treatment or to go to the best hospital to treat their eyes. And like someone diagnosed with my eye condition, we're not able to find any way to like solve it, or sometimes they waste their money to try some, we call it is like mystery treatment or any very traditional way. Like you have heard about Chinese traditional medicine. So some doctor will give them different herbs and they will boil the herbs. Then it's useless, but it's quite expensive. But here, I don't think my eye condition can be treated here, but at least we can find some much more information about eye condition, and probably we can get help from different charity. But in China, actually, we got some visual impaired related charities, but we got too much people with vision impairment, so they can't provide service, provide help to everyone. That's something need to be improved, I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Yanan. And I know members of your family responded quite differently to your diagnosis. Can you just tell us a little about that?
Okay, so because my grandparents and my parents, maybe they received a little bit better education. I know it's very stereotyped, but they prefer to offer me the best education, and they prefer to let me to do and try whatever I can and I want. So once they know I'm vision impaired and is at current stage, it's untreatable. So they sent me to the best university, and they sent me to UK to receive my master and my PhD. So that's their attitudes towards me. It's quite different from the mainstream society's attitude towards vision impaired people. They usually think, okay, you are vision impaired, you are blind, so it's like a waste or useless person. So just stay at home. If possible, make a living to keep survive.
And you've certainly taken that on board with your parents, haven't you? Because you've travelled a lot as well, don't you?
Yeah, I travel a lot. I have independently visited 7 countries, and I think it's part of my lifestyle. I love traveling and talking to different people, and I enjoy to, it's like put myself into their shoes to understand their culture and the differences. And I even visited many visually impaired people in different countries like Czech Republic, and to understand their life situation and the work employment situation, because my research focuses on the underemployment of visually impaired people.
Thank you, Yanan. And just interested to know the health and social care professionals that you've come into touch with since you've been here in the UK. Do you think they consider your cultural background? Is that something that ever comes in? And if not, how might they do that? And is that important to you?
Think about my experience. I don't think they will consider too much about my cultural background. They will presume you are here, so you understand everything here. And they never, from my personal experience, there never be tolerance to my different situation and my culture difference, even my language difference. Not everyone come here, they can speak very fluent and native English, but all the practitioners that I contacted, once they know I cannot speak English as fluent as they are, they usually become very, very impatient to say or shout it at me. So that's my personal experience. But it sometimes becomes different if I go to very famous hospital to see the famous doctors. So their attitude will be very different. But my experience with the GP or like local surgery is very weird, I would say.
And how would you feel if a professional that you came into touch with actually asked you about your culture? Would that be a positive thing for them to do, or whether there was anything that they needed to know about?
I think from my experience, just ask me whatever information you want. I never mind. I don't think as politely will raise any issue. So any question or any concern, just directly tell me. It's better than shout it at me.
Thank you, Yana. And just one final question. Do you feel that living with inherited sight loss has had an impact on your ability to work or socialise in the UK?
I don't think so. I think everyone need to have it's like course or stage to get themselves used to the environment. I don't think it's quite relevant to visual impairment. So now I'm working here and I receive my education here. I think it's not a problem for me. Whatever I want to do, I will find a way to do.
And have you made many friends? Have you been able to socialise here?
I got very, very few friends here actually. Most of my friends were from my university, but it's like 95, 96% of them went back to their home country or they moved to other country for their job. So I only have 2-3 good friends living in UK, but there are most of them, I can say 2 of them are not based in London. So I only got one friend here, and where he lived is very, very far from my flat.
Well, you're among friends today, Yana, and I'm sure lots of people will be keen to have a chat with you at lunchtime.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to Faye. So Faye, you've told us that your son lives with RP and he's now 26. I wondered if you could tell us first a little bit about Joe's diagnosis. We heard quite a lot of that this morning about different perspectives. We're really interested to hear what it was like, particularly for you as Joe's mum.
Obviously there was no experience of RP in our family, so it was a big shock. My mum noticed when Joe was about 4, my mum thought there was something up with his eyes, just by the way he'd look at the television screen and look at anything, close up. He'd sort of dip his head down, so I took him to the opticians and they prescribed him with glasses. And because his vision wasn't really coming up and improving with the glasses, then he was referred to Whipps Cross. He was there for a few years, and again, nothing was really changing when it should have been. So then they referred him to Moorfields, and they felt that he would probably need contact lenses because it's closer on the eye and it would help bring his vision up. And it was actually the lady that we saw at Moorfields under the contact lens department who thought it might be something else was going on and sent him for a test where they tested for RP. But she didn't really explain to me what that was at the time. She just wanted to get this thing checked out. So he went for the test, and then we needed to go back and get the results. And I met with another consultant who then delivered the news, and I was on my own with Joe. Joe was 8 now, and she just sort of said, well, he won't be driving, you need to manage his expectations because he won't be driving fire engines. And so it was just in the manner that it was done. It was because I knew nothing about this diagnosis, and all I could sort of hear was he was going to lose his vision. And obviously Joe was 8, he was just sort of sitting there smiling, didn't really know what was going on, and am I all right, mummy? And I was like, everything's fine, you know. And then I just sort of left, and then I can't really remember what was said at the time. I think, you know, we'll send you an appointment through to see one of the professors here and find out a bit more. So I took Joe to the toilet, and I waited outside, and I called my ex-husband at the time and just burst into tears and said, I think Joe's going to go blind. And so it was all quite shocking, really. And then he was very good, actually. He sort of researched when we got home. He was straight on to Google. I actually didn't really want to know because I had to process it. It took me a while to get my head around it before then. And then I think I got in touch with you guys to find out a bit more.
So when you walked out of that initial appointment, you weren't signposted to any support?
No.
You were given that news on your own with your son?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you talk to Joe about his RP now? Do you have quite open conversations? Obviously, he's a young adult. How do you manage that, and how does that affect you?
It's getting better, I have to say. It has. I think he's never really wanted to talk about it. I think he never complains, ever, never moans about anything, just gets on with it. But equally, it's quite difficult sometimes because I can't see what he sees. But he is getting, as he's got older, he's a bit more open to it, but it is difficult. I don't tiptoe around him, though. I do try and, you know, find out what's going on with him. But he's very much doesn't like a fuss. He just wants to be treated normally, to be honest, and I think that's why he doesn't really like talking about it. And I think some of the guys that I've met through the charity, they've all kind of said, leave him alone, let him grow up, let him be a lad, let him do his thing. Well, don't push, he'll come to you if he wants to talk. But it is quite frustrating as a parent because obviously I want to keep him safe.
And you've also, when we chatted before, you were telling me that just sort of the day-to-day stuff you find quite challenging because Joe isn't particularly independent.
He's independent in some ways. Around the home, it's not so much. I mean, he went to university in Liverpool, took himself off there, and you know, he didn't talk to anyone there. That was what my worry was. He didn't really sort of make friends and tell them that he had this condition. So they probably thought something wasn't quite right, but not sure what. So that was quite. But I couldn't force him to do that. So he was independent in that way, getting about. He then went down to Bournemouth to do his masters, and then to finish his masters he actually went to Germany on his own, which was a big worry for me about him having an accident or something, knowing that he wouldn't probably be open about his diagnosis. At home, it's tough because I'm sort of like mum and dad, and so I work full time, and it's things like cooking, you know, washing, just doing all the daily stuff. And having to, you know, look out for him at home and do all those jobs, and not saying, "Oh, Joe can just go and do that for me," because he will struggle. Yeah. So that's quite draining.
When we spoke before, I think you were telling me that he hadn't had a lot of support. Actually, he hadn't had sort of rehab support or anybody to come and see him and help him with that independent living, which is, you know, which is really concerning actually. Yeah. What about day-to-day worries for Joe. We've talked a bit about the burden on you that you feel as a parent. I know Joe's working at the moment. Do you have day-to-day worries for him when he's out and about?
Yeah, I worry about him having an accident a lot of the time. I tried to switch off from that. I mean, he had an accident a few weeks ago. Walked into a lamppost and split his cheek open. But he's actually working for Blind in Business now, which is absolutely fantastic, on an internship, and I think he's getting on really well there. But obviously he travels up on the tube, so he's got one of those badges to give up, a seat, but he won't use it. For him, he has explained to me that it's much easier for him to be by the doors because he gets flustered, obviously, with lots of people around him, so he can get on quickly and get off quickly. I insisted that he use his cane because he sort of didn't really want to do that, and I said, you've got to make other people aware, because I worry about things like if he knocks into somebody and then has a bit, someone gets a bit stroppy because he's knocked into them and they can't see that he's got a problem. So he's getting a little bit more open to be a little bit more responsible with things like that. But I do worry, a lot.
I think that's something we'll probably pick up on later in the discussion, because I think, Bobby, you'll probably pick up on that same point as, which will be interesting for us to hear. And again, as a mum, we worry about our children.
Yeah.
Joe's future, what are your hopes and aspirations for Joe's future, and equally, what are his?
I just would love to see him doing something that he absolutely loves. The other issue I have with Joe, he's quite reserved, and he doesn't really have friends, and that's not because he doesn't get on with people, because he does. Anyone that comes across Joe, he's just a really nice person. He doesn't complain, he doesn't say anything bad about people. He's just very chilled, very laid back. But I worry, he's with me a lot of the time. When he's at home, he's with me. And every now and then I'll send him off to my mum and dad's just so we have a bit of a break from one another. I'm sure it's nice for him and it's nice for me. But I worry about work, because obviously at the moment he's only doing an internship. I mean, whether he'll stay on at Blind in Business, I'm not sure. Before that internship came across, he was really struggling to get a job, and he's incredibly intelligent. He's a beautiful writer. He's got a master's in history, and he's very good at research. He's extremely bright, but I think when he applied for jobs, obviously he was very open about his diagnosis in his applications. And I'm not sure if he was discriminated against. I don't know. I don't know if someone gets a CV with two people with exactly the same skills and one of them has a vision impairment, will they, put that one aside because it might be too difficult to employ someone? So I worry about him finding the right job for himself. Yeah.
Thank you. So we've already heard two very different perspectives, as for young adults, and actually the parents' perspective as well. I'm going to move on to Jen. So Jen, your dad lives with inherited sight loss. In fact, he's a great supporter of Retina UK. What do you recall, from a child's perspective of growing up with a parent with sight loss?
Well, I should start probably by saying that our version of RP is very slow to progress. So the changes that I saw initially with my dad were very slow. So it was just kind of always there in the background. So the sort of bad eyes, we never called it RP particularly. And you just kind of adapt as a kid growing up. You just kind of, we've dropped the ball when we're playing catch. I need to guide you a bit more to where that ball is on the ground. And it was just kind of there, and there was nothing particularly sudden or shocking about it because it was a gradual change as I was growing up. There were some changes towards my late teens. I became more anxious about nighttime driving because I know that my dad's nighttime vision wasn't as great as it was when I was younger, so I had concerns about that. But there was nothing particularly shocking. It was just something you always grew up with, and I wasn't discouraged from talking about it in any way. It was just there, really, and we kind of adapted to that.
Just part of who your dad was and part of the way it was in your family.
Exactly that, yeah.
And at what point, obviously, RP is an inherited condition, at what point did you start to consider what that might mean for you personally, and what were your feelings around that?
Well, looking back, I'm a bit surprised I didn't think about it earlier, if I'm honest, because with our form of RP, there's a 50-50 chance of inheriting that, and I just didn't consider it, and I kind of thought I'd escaped it. And then, sort of in my mid-30s, I started to get some of those same night vision problems, explain them away, and you think it's not what it is, and I hadn't considered it until that point, and I kind of don't really know why I hadn't considered it until that point, because I guess I grew up with it. So, and then obviously a diagnosis came a little bit later, and then that's me along the same lines as my dad, which is good and bad really, because I have this ability to sort of project my future, because I can see the progression of RP within my family very closely. My dad's always been an excellent role model. Since getting his formal diagnosis, he's been very open about talking about that with me. It's never taboo in our family. We're allowed to talk and discuss. I was never afraid of it because of that. I was always able to call him up and say, I can still do that right now, and talk about it if I'm worried about something. So although it wasn't pleasant to get that diagnosis, it was never a problem, because we always were able to discuss it, and that's been really important for me. So
I think that's a really valuable perspective to hear, actually, with the inherited nature of the condition, the experiences that you had as a young person. And again, we're going to hear something quite different from Bobby, but for, I think, everybody in the room and those at home, that role model that you had in your father was so important.
And it continues to be that way, because it's a progressive thing. Like I said, it's very slow in our family to progress, so there's nothing sudden, but those adaptations and those changes, if I just want to be able to see somebody directly adapting to those things, I can project almost, it might progress differently with me, but I can talk to my dad and my mum and think about how that might look for me and make future decisions, maybe based upon what they're choosing to do, and I might do it differently. So.
Sure. And you have a partner of your own. Do you have conversations about your sight loss and what you've learned from your parents?
It's very interesting, because in the 16 years we've been together, I find she has grown to understand my dad over that time period, and sort of understand what his sight loss means, and then sort of again project into the future for us. So we are trying to be quite proactive about discussing those things together and what decisions we will make. So I prefer to live in a city so that I can retain some independence, whereas my parents live in the countryside, and that means something different for them. It's a different decision. So because we've had that ability to see that, we actively can make decisions and have conversations around what the future might look like. And again, I say it's, a very slow progression of eyesight loss, so we're able to have those conversations perhaps in more of a long time frame than other people may be able to have. So
I know when we spoke, you gave me an example of going to the cinema and how your partner sort of preempting us learned from your parents.
Well, it's I know it's not everyone's ability to be able to find humour in such things, but we try to. So I sometimes ask her for an audio description when I don't need it, just to see what she'll come up with. So, sometimes we'll attempt those things, and I realise I'm fortunate not necessarily to need those things directly yet, but in the future I probably will. So we're trying to get ahead of those things, and we try to make a joke out of them if we can. So.
And for some families, those conversations are incredibly difficult. How do you open the conversation? And this is something we're going to have an expert's view on this afternoon. How do you open those conversations, and do you feel well equipped to do so?
I feel very fortunate, because through our life experiences we have been quite proactive, my partner and I, about trying to deal with our own mental health, and I feel that on a good day we have the words that we need to have difficult conversations if we need to have them. I know there'll be frustrations in the future, and we've probably not been properly tested on those things yet, but I feel very fortunate that we have the dialogue and the ability to sit down and have those conversations when we need to have them. I know not everybody is fortunate enough to have the ability to have those conversations, or necessarily been given the time and space to consider how they would open those conversations. But we don't shy away from things, and we'll check in quite often with how we're feeling about things, or I'm a planner, so I like to know about things in advance. So we'll try and plan for the future as much as possible. And I feel very well equipped to have those conversations, and I feel like that's something very important for people to be supported with if they don't have the ability to have those conversations. because it's a tool that we're not all equipped with, and sometimes we have to be taught how or given the words to have those conversations.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jen. And then on to Bobby and Lou. Bobby, there's a lot of RP in your family. Your mum, your uncles, cousins. How are things growing up for you?
So, growing up where I was in Swansea, RP was a massive taboo. And if anyone watches Harry Potter, it's he who shall not be named. We don't mention it. We don't think about it. And growing up watching my mother suffer with it, I don't think back then the support you get today is the same as it was when she was diagnosed, but I think she felt that I definitely didn't have it, and I have a twin sister, and she's grown to have an impeccable career in the army, and she's studying to be a paediatric nurse. But my mother always said, you haven't got it, grow up, live your life. I was in my young 20s. I was going back further than that. When I was probably 16, I tried to join the army, and she put on the form, even though I didn't have RP, or she didn't suspect me to have it, because my eyes were okay then. She wrote on the form that there's a history in the family, and because of that, they terminated my. When I went for selection, they terminated me there, saying basically because it's on the form and there's a possible chance you can have RP because it's in the history of your family. They just rejected me straight away. I was very upset. Again, I was really young. It made me quite rebellious growing up. I sort of latched on to the fact that it's not just my mum, but my uncles were saying, you don't have it, grow up, you know, it's fine, just go live your life, go get your driving now, it's fine. And I did. When I got my independence, again, I wasn't experiencing any issues, even in my young 20s. Went into security, and then went into like nightclub security. I know RP is full of night blindness, but I just, whether it was psychologically, I just coped with it or not. I don't know if I had it or not, but I put it to the back of my mind. Joined the prison service, so I was posted up in South Gloucester, which was in a rural part of the countryside. So it was all like country lanes, driving, night driving, and I was fine. I thought I was fine. And then the realization was then working in the prison in an operational environment where I was starting to kick wet floor signs, literally skying them in the air, missing prisoners on a roll call, which was not great. And people were putting it down and saying, oh, Brownie, you're just being dumb, you're just being stupid. And I thought it was. And I still kept it at the back of my mind. And then, obviously, I met Lou in the prison service, who was also a prison officer, by the way. And we, yes, I had to point that out. So.
No messing.
So Lou was also working with me. And when we got together, I say they keep it in the service, it was Lou who sort of told me that you're not stupid, there's something wrong. And then, even then, coming into my late 20s, I was, do I tell her, do I mention it? And then because I was probably away from my family at that time, living out of Wales, I sort of disclosed it to Lou.
You started doing some quirky stuff, didn't
Very
you?
quirky stuff.
You just started doing some things.
Well, I think the symptoms are getting worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was quite early on, that was.
It was. And so I became quite arrogant, I would say, and I was quite ignorant to it, quite naive. I sort of started falling into a bit of a pit of depression with it. I didn't want to lose my job. I was very passionate about my role as a prison officer. Seeing as I failed to get into the army, I thought this was my next best thing for my career. It was taking off. I was doing well, met great amount of people, and I just thought it was going to be taken away from me. So I chose not to pursue the RP and just play it off as if I was just being stupid. But it was...
That's when COVID hit as well.
COVID hit,
Yeah.
and the prison environment became a lot bit more hostile, I would say, where I really was starting to feel I had to be mature now and really go out there and maybe pursue this and check that, you know, I knew in the back of my mind that it probably is going to be RP, and still my family were drumming into me, no, don't do this, it's a silly idea, you're going to lose everything and they're going to pull the rug from under you. And I really felt like I'm in a catch-22 here. And it was a very, very difficult time for me, where I really had to step out of my comfort zone and into my uncomfort zone and really pursue this. And that's where I started reaching out because of Lou. Because
Yeah, I'd just be interested to... So Lou stepped in. Lou, who's also a prison officer, stepped in. Lou, you were the one who picked up the phone and called Retina UK. Can you tell us sort of why you did that and what that call was like?
So, like Bobby said, I picked up on that there was some quirky stuff going on. We hadn't been dating all that long. I was aware of Bobby's mum, but nobody else of the family. And it was just a stress, the crippling stress. Because I was doing the same job as Bobby, I knew I was seeing from both sides. I was seeing the stress in work, the stress that Bobby was coming home with, and it was just added more to it because of there was something. We just didn't know exactly what. So I decided, I was just doing a little bit of internet searching. Bearing in mind at this point, Bobby, there was no discussion of it. Back a couple of years ago, there's no way we would be here. We didn't discuss it. Every now and again, I'd approach the subject of, you know, some of the odd things, and it was shut right down. So I decided to do a little bit of internet searching myself. I came across a telephone number for Retina UK, and I personally was like a breaking point. I didn't know what to do. None of my family have, other than like old age eyesight issues. There's no eyesight problems in my family. Obviously, Bobby wasn't from where I am from, because he's from Wales, and he had nobody. And so I reached out to Retina UK. I was on the phone to this guy, I can't remember his name, but I was on the phone to this guy for hours, and I didn't realise straight away that he had RP as well. But it was really refreshing, because other than Bobby and his family, I had met them, but it wasn't discussed in his family, and it was almost discouraged. Now it's not so bad, but at the time it was like, you don't discuss it, you don't have it, look at your twin, your twin doesn't have it, if you say anything, you will lose everything. And so it was really a tough time, because I also, at the time, I didn't know much about RP, but I also knew a lot about the prison service, and I knew of the dire consequences if Bobby was to make a mistake, not through him not being able to do his job properly, because of not paying attention or anything, but because he was doing some quirky stuff. So, like I said, I reached out to them, and he was a lovely guy, and I was on the phone for hours, and I just come away from that conversation with so much more knowledge and hope. And he spoke about his partner, or his wife, and the things that he did over his time. And I just thought some of the things he was saying was like hitting home, because it was Bobby. And I was his wife, this man's wife, and some of the things that it was so refreshing to speak to somebody. So I came away from that conversation, I kept the number, and I gave it to Bobby. Now, I left it to him, because at this point, like I said, there was no discussing it. It was, I've had a bad day, I'm tired, I'm stressed, and that was the end of it. And I gave it to him, and I just said, look, here's the number. You can do as you wish with that, but bearing in mind, bless him, he can be a bit stubborn with certain things, and he wasn't budging, not for a few weeks. And then one day we were at home, and I was just like pottering around in the house, and I just heard you were on the phone, and you just did it on a whim, didn't you? And then they always call back. You like leave a message and they call you back, and it was Mark. I don't know where. Oh, there he is. And it was Mark that rang Bobby back, and then ever since then, you've always spoken to Mark. But the good thing, you come off of that conversation, and at the time, that was probably the closest person in your age group, other than your family, that understood RP, because all Bobby knew was there was something wrong with his eyes, but there wasn't anything wrong with his eyes really, but there was, but we don't discuss it. And so when he did start seeing somebody or speaking to somebody, I could just see the change in him. COVID had hit then, so we were waiting for all the tests and stuff. And then in one day, we went up to Oxford. It was Professor Downs. And we went in one day, didn't we? And we came out of there with a lot of knowledge. And it was a long day. It was a very long day. But we went from like the diagnosis, then we went to see, I think it was Sean, and then the other people part of the day. Genetic counselling, wasn't it? And then they just put us in touch with so many people, and Retina UK was one of them.
Yeah.
So really good to hear that you had that. Once you were able to, you were accessing the support, and the clinic experience was good. Bobby, do you mind telling us a bit about that call that you made? I mean, picking up the phone, that was a massive step for you when you called the helpline.
Yeah, so it took me to the age of 30, having back and forth discussions with Lou, and we argued sometimes because I still was very doubtful that it is RP, and I'm just, again, it's really confusing, really confusing time of my life, and I just, one day I was falling into a pit of depression. I recognised that, and I really had to break the mould here and go against the grain, go against my family's wishes, go against, and it took me to the age of 30, and I do feel like I was a bit embarrassed by that. I'm a full-grown man and I can make my own decisions, but I just listened to the wrong circle, as you want to say. And so I rung Retina UK and no one answered. So I left my name and number, and I thought, I don't know, I don't know why I did that. It was just leave it as it is. And then within 10 minutes, I had a call back, and it was Mark, and I didn't know how to start the conversation, but Mark pretty much straight away just made me feel very at ease with the whole conversation. And it was with Mark, I suppose, and I'm probably going to embarrass him by saying this, but he probably was my first role model, in a sense, that I've ever met. Someone who's completely unbiased, someone who's letting me speak, letting me vent, and then telling me his story. I got to know him, and I think we were on the phone for about 3 hours, possibly more than that, maybe. It was a very long phone call, but I got to know Mark, and Mark got to know me, and Mark really did help me see a direction where I can go with this, and it was because of Mark that I had the confidence and I knew how to approach my line manager and work, which I was very scared to do because the prison service is very stiff upper lip, and it's like if I was going to come out and say I potentially might be losing my sight, I just thought they were going to, again, pull the rug from under me, right, you can't work operational, you've lost your job, you can't work here no more. And I was very scared, I was very upset, but Mark really did help me put my mind at ease and how I can approach my work, my organisation, and explain that I'm going to get tested, I potentially may have this issue. And he was absolutely right from the start. My work, the organisation, the prison service, they were extremely supportive, they were understanding. They didn't know what the hell I was talking about when I was trying to explain my symptoms, because they're saying, again, whether it's the spectrum thing, where they try to think they're diverse and inclusive, but they really didn't have a clue what to do with me. And my line manager at the time was like, look, you're the first in my 25-year career, I haven't got a clue what to do with you, but you're definitely not going on the landings, which was fair enough. I was very upset by that, but again, they really did support me. And with the prison service comes a lot of dark humour, which, you know, so it was a lot of it was quite jokey and bantery at the time, which probably got me through it as well. But I wouldn't be here today. Whatever reason I made that call, I just decided to do it. But it is this charity, this organisation, that is the reason I'm here today. And I haven't lost my job. In fact, I've met more people. I've met interesting people. I've done more interesting things. And discovering Mark stood on a plane and probably hiked the lengths of Australia and stuff like that. He's done more stuff which probably able people have done. And again, on a role model, look at it, it's got me changing my whole, how I see life and how I deal with life now. And I'm fully embracing the RP because Professor Downs diagnosed me. And again, it was, I felt it was quite quick. It was how it happened. It was actually a long wait in a sense, but by the time it came around and getting diagnosed, it was very much, yep, you've got RP. There's no going back. This is the evidence. And because Professor Downs showed me that helped me accept it much better. And then I could say to my family, look, I've done it. I have it. I was living a lie all my life.
It was going to be a matter of time, wasn't it? Whether it was now in your 40s or 50s, it was because of the job we were doing. It needed to be looked into. You needed to get it. You needed to be tested. You needed to be acknowledged of what you had.
I know, Lou, that you have some quite strong views around the conversations that you will have with Bobby and other people about sight loss, reflecting on your childhood, Bobby, and I know you've spoken about the fact that that's not what you want to, that's not how you want it to be in your family.
No. So, because I noticed something quite early on, I did have not a decision as such, but if we do want to have children and things like that and have a family, so I think it's one of those things, if it's such an issue for me, or the idea of having a child that may have RP, you either stick with Bobby or you don't. So if I was happy, I didn't know the ins and outs of RP at the time, but I was like, right, I'm going to stick, you know, I knew we had a good thing going. And
it impacted Lou just as much as I think it impacted me having the disease.
It was just a bit different seeing from your family. I probably thought naively, because there were so many, as I've obviously dated Bobby longer, realised there's a lot more than there isn't with RP. I think I naively thought, right, okay, they're going to like acknowledge it and embrace it. There's none of that. There was none of it. So it was very much, well, you can do this or you can do that. And it's like, well, actually, no, we can't. But that's by the by. So I just said to Bobby, like, as our relationship progressed, if we were to have children, there would be none of this, you know, you don't talk about it.
There'll be no
stigma.
I grew up with the stigma of it, but we made sure it shouldn't be.
I made it quite clear that if we were to have children and stuff, I wasn't going to have a child that was potentially put the fear of God into something that they have no say in it. I made that quite clear that that wasn't going to be the case. And pretty much I would like our family to be like yourselves, that this is what we have, this is what we're going to deal with, we are going to adapt with it, and then we're going to try and move on and adapt with it, whatever comes of whether they have it or not, kind of thing.
Thank you. And we're just so pleased that you found us and that you've been welcomed into the Retina UK community. And I know you've got all kinds of plans and you're doing all kinds of things, and I appreciate that for all of our panellists, this has been a massive thing for them to do today. And we are going to have, I hope, a little bit of time for questions. But before we do, can we just show our appreciation of how open they've been? So, any questions from the floor or from those joining us online? Appreciate there's a lot to take in there.
I've just got a very quick comment. If that was so emotive, you know, that exactly what you guys have all said today, makes everything that we do so worthwhile. I really mean that.
And can I just add to that, for those of you who aren't aware of the mysterious Mark, who's been mentioned quite a lot, Mark is with us here today. Mark has been a very long-term supporter of the charity as a fundraiser and as a volunteer, and is also now, I'm pleased to say, a member of the Retina UK staff team, so we're very fortunate to have him on board.
I just wanted to say I wasn't getting any commission.
And also, just to mention that everybody involved in our information and support helpline has lived experience. So this is one of the things that we can support you with. You know, you may not have lived experience. If you don't, then signpost. And we've heard today about the benefit of being able to have conversations with other people with that lived experience. I think we've got a question at the back.
I think we do, but just before we do that, I just want to echo what Matt said and what Paula said. The people on the stage today, your openness is absolutely inspiration, and the eloquent way with which you put across your stories is immeasurably useful for everybody in this room and beyond. And it's just absolutely amazing that you've come here today and taken the time and been so inspirational. And I'm going to go to a question, and I think it's just here. I'm just going to get this gentleman.
Hello, my name is Madhu. I work for a medical research charity called LifeArc. Very inspiring, but you all mentioned, I think, as those suffering from a condition, the daily travails of life and just getting on with it in a very powerful and inspiring way. What could we do better as a member of the public? I mean, somebody mentioned the difficulty on the tube, etc. How could we develop that empathy and sympathy that Jasleen so eloquently put across? Is there anything that you can tell us that we can actually then develop that whole area across the board within the public?
I think from my point of view, it's awareness out there. I mean, I'll just give an example. You talked about Bobby talked about the yellow cones and yeah, I mean, they're just horrific. And where we live at Loughton Station, they just always put them right in the middle if there's rain. And I've gone to the station master so many times and said, my son's got a visual impairment, and not everyone with a visual impairment will have an aid. And they just won't see them, they go over them. But it keeps coming back. They just keep putting it back in the middle and not towards the side. You know, it's put hazards in the way. I think it's just making people a bit more socially aware of people do have these disabilities, and they're not always, I think the perception is if someone's got a visual impairment, they're going to look a certain way or walk a certain way, or they have a cane or glasses on, but it's not always the way at all. And if you looked at Joe until he probably starts moving around, you wouldn't know.
One of the things we'll be talking about tomorrow at our annual conference is that awareness raising piece and sort of challenging public preconceptions, attitudes and behaviours, and what we can all do to support with that. So I don't know how many of the people with us today are joining tomorrow, but you're very welcome to join us online. We are full tomorrow in person, but you'd be very welcome to join online. Another question.
Is that me? All right. I just wanted to reflect what a few of the other people have said as well, in that those are really wow stories, and I thank you for sharing those with us. Incredible stories. Somebody also asked about what can people do to help. There's only two really things that I think really help. One is to ask questions, and two is just to be nice. That's it. That's all you need to do. And if you just follow those rules in any aspect of your life, just ask questions and be nice, and that's it. But I'm no longer involved with Retina UK, but it's great to hear that Retina UK are still doing a magnificent job, because they were part of the saving grace for me as well. So brilliant organisation. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question?
Hello. I'm just wondering, do you have any support for deaf-blind people like me? Because for a deaf and blind person, life is so hard because we can't communicate. How would you support someone like me? Have you done so in the past?
Yes, so We have a number of our community live with Usher syndrome, so we're very much aware of dual sensory loss and very much prepared and ready to support people with dual sensory loss. We also work with other charities, collaborate with other charities that specialise in dual sensory loss. So yes, we're here for you. You're very welcome to be part of the Retina UK community. Please come and have a chat with us on the stand, and we'll let you know how we can best support if that's what you're looking for. Thank you. Another question from the floor?
Hi, I'm Alison. I'm a tech advisor at Site Support Worthing. I live with quite a few medical issues, all to do with my eyes. Retina's the latest one. I have 2 children that also were born with eye conditions, both born blind, thankfully can see a little bit now. So this is a little bit of a personal question for you all, which I know Bobby and you and your partner broached this, but how do you feel for all of you about bringing children into the world knowing that they potentially would have the same condition as you? Do you feel having that lived experience yourself would make you a bit more confident about actually having children, or would you choose a different process? I know for me, having had 2 children, my reason for stopping at 2 is that the mental exhaustion of back and forth to Great Ormond Street for the first 4 years of both of their lives has left me with PTSD, and that's my only reason. But I wouldn't have another child through any other means. It's just we stopped at 2 and that was that.
I feel like you just gotta just not act normal or get on with it, but just having a visual impairment or being told you're going blind, it shouldn't change how you live or how you raise children, or you just fully embrace it. And
I wouldn't want our child to be treated different. I would want it to be acknowledged, like we've discussed, like with your family. I would want it to be acknowledged, but I wouldn't be like, oh, I don't feel I can have a child with you. No.
It's more about educating and raising awareness as often as you can.
Because of your eyesight issue, and we are very open in our household, we are very open with it. So I think...
No, we are.
Yeah, now we are. But like, I am prepared to... I fully appreciate what you're saying. Like, it is a lot of stress. I am prepared if our child does have, if we are to have children and it does have RP, I am prepared for what it may entail. I'm not put off having children.
You still have, like, those of us living with visual impairments, as there's quite a few in the building, we know we can live very fulfilled lives, and it actually does take the sighted people around us that don't have that lived experience to actually listen to us and respect us enough to actually allow us to make these decisions, because, you know, we can go out there, we can change the world, and our children can change the world. We just have to allow them to do so. So that's really good to hear.
Just say be yourself and be the best possible role model you can be.
Yeah, we've absolutely heard that from Jen today, haven't we?
Yeah.
And,
it's not always perfect, but considering your perspective, it's absolutely great, yeah.
Okay, Yanan or Faye, is there anything either of you want to add to that? No? Okay.
One question from home.
Okay, question online?
I just want to say before I ask the question, there's a huge amount of appreciation from our audience online as well for everything that you've contributed to this session today. So thanks from the online community as well. Just a quick question for Yanan. It seems like there needs to be more support or charity support perhaps for the VI community in China. Have you considered maybe going back one day and working in that area yourself?
Yes, I plan to, after doing my PhD, I plan to work for an international organization. I think I will not only benefit my home country, I hope to change a little bit to visually impaired people living all over the world, because not everyone like you have such good condition to have very good education system, medical care system. I have some friends from Africa or from like South America. The situation there wasn't good as here. So I hope to make changes to all of their lives.
Thank you, Yanan. I'm sure you will. Have we got time for one more or not? Sure what. I think that probably is a yes. Last question. Okay, from the floor. Thank you.
Hi there, my name's Russell Sparks. I'm a rehabilitation worker based in Croydon, South London. I just wanted to ask you guys, what was your experience of rehabilitation services in your area, the rehabilitation workers that you work with, if you did, and are you aware of those services?
I'm not aware myself, so...
So Jo hasn't had rehabilitation?
No.
Anybody else accessed rehab?
I've not had to access anything yet.
No. Bobby, are you aware of rehab? And
You've had a few, yeah, you've had a few things.
I think it took to my second ECLO I met who mentioned that, who mentioned there was a service, and it was basically just on a printout, basically, but at the time, but we sort of looked into it.
The ECLO, no. So on Oxford side of things, once we were there, the ECLO there was fine. It was before that was a bit...
Yeah, it was, wasn't very informative, but yeah, it was only until Oxford that things became a little clearer.
She put us in touch with a lot of things. We had like a support worker come to the house, do some adjustments to the house, your stick training,
hints and tips and stuff.
access to work, and things like that.
Yeah.
So after the diagnosis, we were relatively lucky. It was just before the diagnosis. I suppose they didn't know exactly what Bobby had at the time. So
I think the interesting choice of words there is we were lucky. And actually what we don't want is for this to come down to luck. It shouldn't be luck. Going back to the presentation that Rob gave us this morning about the sight loss pathway, we want to be in a position where we're very confident that everybody who receives a diagnosis is made aware of all of the services that are available to them, the things that they're entitled to. So actually, if they're not automatically hooked into services, at the very least they can ask and say, I'm aware of this, how do I access it? So yeah, let's hope we can get this pathway up and published and off the ground, because it will make a real difference to people, and it won't be down to luck. It will be a pathway that will be followed. I'm really going to get in trouble with Matt now if we carry on any longer, I can tell. And we really don't want me to get in trouble with Matt. So once again, thank you so much to everybody on the panel. I know most of you are around at lunchtime. Please speak to them.
Thank you ever so much. And as Paula was just saying, I think most of these guys are hanging around over lunchtime. So if you've got any questions you want to ask them, if you're here with us, then please come and find them and ask all of those questions you didn't want to ask in public. So lunch is served back across in the exhibition space. If you requested a specific dietary requirement, those sandwiches are kept separately, so please don't go and grab those sandwiches. Everybody else who didn't have a specific dietary requirement, they're already in your bags. So we would very much like to have you back at 1:20, please. Thank you very much.